Remote work dismantled the concept of the corporate firewall. The traditional on-premises network perimeter is obsolete. In a decentralized cloud-first environment, localized machine accounts and domain-joined computer profiles create unnecessary risk. These accounts are tethered to on-premises architecture and cannot authenticate natively to modern cloud services. Because the workforce is now distributed, the physical building can no longer secure the network. The authenticated user identity replaces the physical office as the true security perimeter. Building and enforcing this identity-centric management system requires specialized cloud engines, Microsoft Intune and Microsoft Entra ID. Microsoft Entra ID serves as the central identity storage and permissions database, while Intune enforces the policies. The legacy method granted trust to a device simply because it was physically plugged into a network port inside the office. Zero-trust architecture discards this assumption, demanding mathematical verification for every endpoint, application, and identity, regardless of their location. Failing to shift from machine-centric to identity-centric management leaves the enterprise blind. It exposes organizations directly to modern credential theft and lateral network movement. Deployment begins with a blank cloud tenant, which is your organization's dedicated workspace within Microsoft 365. Intune cannot manage hardware without an essential foundation of verified users. Microsoft Entra ID acts as the central identity storage engine that powers Intune's authorization matrix. Hybrid environments use Entra Connect Sync to mirror legacy Active Directory accounts into the cloud. These synchronized identities populate the Intune Admin Center, ready for policy assignment. Alternatively, cloud-only organizations can import users directly via CSV files. Intune automatically classifies these raw imported identities into default global groups, such as all users and all devices, providing an immediate baseline for management. Without this synchronized, centralized identity repository established inside Entra ID, enforcing cloud-native endpoint security is structurally impossible. With identities in place, we move to hardware enrollment. A newly purchased device is inherently untrusted by the network. To manage this hardware safely, an architectural pivot must occur during the device enrollment phase. This is known as establishing user affinity. User affinity is the explicit bond between a user and specific device, forged during first sign-in. Security payloads and access rights follow the user exclusively to that hardware. In contrast, single-task kiosks operate entirely independent of localized user bonds. IT engineers must determine the device's purpose, user-bound or shared, before the Intune enrollment sequence begins. User affinity ensures security payloads target the actual human operating the machine, not just a physical MAC address. This logic blocks unauthorized cross-device data leakage. In legacy on-premises environments, administrators control endpoint settings through localized group policy objects, or GPOs. GPOs are collections of settings that determine how systems behave for specific groups of users and computers. These policies flow through a strict hierarchy: local, site, domain, and organizational unit. As rules cascade down this chain, overlapping policies constantly conflict and overwrite each other. Intune abandons traditional cascading hierarchy, replacing it with a flat, cloud-based policy deployment model. The driving engine is the Settings Catalog, a centralized Intune interface allowing administrators to configure thousands of device settings from one location. Administrators select specific configurations from this catalog and assign them directly to the Entra ID user groups, bypassing nested machine structures entirely. Moving to the Settings Catalog eliminates the severe latency, update failures, and conflict issues inherent to legacy on-premises domain replication. Standard passwords carry a central vulnerability. To be verified, they must travel outward across an untrusted network. Passwords transmitted over a network can be intercepted. Furthermore, a single breach at a centralized authentication server can instantly reveal thousands of stored credentials. Intune severs this vulnerability by enforcing a passwordless strategy, specifically leveraging Windows Hello for Business. Windows Hello for Business shifts the authentication burden away from typed text, relying instead on a local PIN or a biometric marker, like facial or fingerprint recognition. This localized biometric data mathematically verifies the user on the device itself. The actual credential never travels to external servers. Intune uses the Settings Catalog to mandate this biometric baseline, alongside certificate-based authentication to grant secure access to corporate Wi-Fi and VPNs. Administrators can strictly enforce multi-factor authentication, or MFA, requirements during the initial enrollment sequence. MFA is a security protocol requiring users to provide 2 or more separate forms of identification before granting access. Combining local biometric verification with cloud-mandated policies makes the identity device bond mathematically verified and resistant to remote credential harvesting. A perfectly secured endpoint is useless if the administrative tenant itself is compromised by an insider threat. Legacy domain admin accounts present a severe danger because they grant sweeping, universal privileges across an entire corporate network. Intune dismantles these monolithic administrative powers using role-based access control, or RBAC. RBAC restricts network access based on the specific roles and responsibilities of individual users within an organization. This matrix illustrates how RBAC assigns granular create, read, update, or delete permissions based strictly on an administrator's specialized job function. Assigning built-in roles, like application manager or policy manager, enforces the principle of least privilege. Strict RBAC compartmentalization prevents a single compromised IT account from initiating a total organization-wide security collapse. Modern endpoint architecture demands completely abandoning localized machine management for a unified cloud-native operational stack. The entire construction sequence requires exact precision, syncing identities via Entra ID, establishing explicit user affinity, and applying flat policies via the settings catalog. This structure relies on 2 defensive pillars, mathematically securing the local login with Windows Hello and protecting the tenant hierarchy with strict RBAC limits. These highly specific, interconnected features work together to transform a raw piece of hardware into a verified zero-trust node. Intune integrates these layers to turn the authenticated user identity into a borderless corporate perimeter, securing the endpoint wherever the user authenticates.